Allow me to introduce myself, the least important introduction of the evening. I'm Professor Kiva, and I'm head of the Department of Law, Governance and International Relations. I have to say it's a great pleasure to be chairing a session on this topic, since in my career I've contributed towards the supervision of quite a few master's dissertations and PhD dissertations on the subject of the Cyprus problem. I have to disappoint you by telling you that none of the students found the solution to the problem, so it still remains today despite their best efforts. It's a great pleasure to welcome our guest speaker this evening, Mr. Stefanos Stefanou, who is government spokesman, the government spokesman on the Cyprus problem. I expect you're all familiar with the standing of the government spokesman in the Cypriot government. I wasn't quite so sure, so I looked it up. And for those of you like me who don't know exactly what that role implies, here's the official version. The government spokesman is responsible for expressing the government policy on the Cyprus problem, as well as on issues of internal government policy. He is essentially entrusted with the task of interpreting and promoting the policy of the government and coordinating the enlightenment activities of the press and the information office. So that's what our guest speaker does for a living in the post which she has held since February 2008. Prior to that, throughout his life, he's been involved in public activities, beginning with the Pan-Cypriot United Students Organisation and the United Democratic Youth Organisation. He also was a keen footballer, as far as he tells us, so he may give us some insights into international football as well as international relations. See, like me, he's a graduate in political science, and theoretically that is well equipped to deal with these issues. Now, Mr. Stephanou has agreed this evening to address you on the subject for about 40 minutes, and I think we'll take some questions after the event, nice questions, of course. So, on behalf of London Metropolitan University, on behalf of EPISTEME, if I've got the pronunciation correct, the Association of the British Cypriot Professionals, I ask you to welcome to the platform Mr. Stefanos Stefanou. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are friends. I would firstly like to thank the Cyprus Lecture of the London Metropolitan University, as well as the Association of British Cypriot Professionals, EPISTEME, for their kind invitation to me to speak on a very interesting subject, the need for a solution to the Cyprus problem and related current developments. In my speech, I shall attempt to draw a clear picture of what constitutes the Cyprus problem. I shall also try to describe what could be its solution and what this solution should secure. Allow me to start by broadly referring to certain historical events which have adversely affected the political state of affairs in Cyprus, but also the whole region. In July 1974, Cyprus met with a great tragedy. The junta, which was at the time ruling Athens, in cooperation with the extreme right wing and ultra-nationalist organization EOKB staged a coup against the government of Archbishop Makarios. 5 days later, Turkey invaded Cyprus on the pretext of restoring constitutional order and the protection of the Turkish Cypriots. The coup and the invasion constituted the climax of conspiracies and external interventions in the internal affairs of the independent Republic of Cyprus, which aimed at keeping Cyprus in NATO's sphere of influence. Since 1974, the Republic of Cyprus has remained de facto divided due to the continuing occupation of a large part of its territory by Turkey, who, through this illegal occupation, blatantly violates the UN Charter and international law. The Cyprus problem is, in effect, a problem of the invasion and illegal occupation by Turkey of a large part of the territory of the Republic of Cyprus. It is a problem of violation on the part of Turkey of the principles of international law, but also of the human rights and basic freedoms of the Cypriot people. The illegal presence of Turkish troops in Cyprus and the presence of British military bases have turned the island into one of the most heavily militarized parts of the planet, as well as into a constant source of danger and abnormality in the region. It is doubtless true that normality, stability, and peace in the region, which is already beset by a multitude of other problems, not the least of which is the problem of the Middle East, can only be served through the viable and functional solution of the Cyprus problem. A solution that will lead to the termination of the Turkish occupation and colonization by thousands of Turkish settlers, and to the reunification of Cyprus in the framework of a bizonal, bicommunal federation, as well as lead to the demilitarization of the unified federal Cyprus Republic. The solution of the Cyprus problem is one of the great wagers the international community is called upon to win. And by the term international community, we refer to the United Nations Organization and the European Union itself, to which Cyprus acceded as a full and equal member on May 1st, 2004. Certainly, the solution of the Cyprus problem is the main goal of the Cypriot people themselves, and particularly of the two larger communities, the Greek Cypriot and the Turkish Cypriot. The solution of the Cyprus problem on the basis of principles is absolutely necessary for Cyprus itself, the region of the Eastern Mediterranean, and the European Union too. Partition does not constitute a real or acceptable solution for Cyprus because it preserves and deepens all those problems to which I have already referred above, and which are a threat for peace and stability in the region, but also a source of problems for the internal cohesion and functionality of the European Union itself. The international community, if it is to serve the cause of stability and security, is obliged to continue to work towards a solution to the Cyprus problem, which will do away with the occupation, restore the integrity and the unity of the Republic of Cyprus, as well as the basic freedoms and the human rights of the Cypriot people as a whole, Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots. Past experience in the sphere of solving international problems teaches us that those solutions which overlook the principles of international law, or those which do not serve the reasonable and lawful interests of the people, but on the contrary violate freedoms and human rights, do not stand the test of time. It is in such cases that problems are exacerbated and become explosive, leading to tragedies. Dear friends, for more than 34 years, the Cyprus problem remains unresolved and pending due to the constant refusal of the Turkish side over time to respect the resolutions of the United Nations and international law, so that the way to solving the problem will be opened. Turkey's insistence on the creation of two sovereign states in Cyprus flies in the face of the resolutions and decisions of the United Nations, which expressly condemn the invasion and occupation and urge all states and the interested parties themselves to refrain from any attempt to achieve partition or union with any other country. The resolutions also consider illegal, as well as null and void, the secessionist action of Turkey to declare the establishment of the so-called Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus in 1983. When discussing the Cyprus problem, the following question begs to be asked. Why should Turkey cooperate towards a solution now, since she has not done so for many years, and since she's taking advantage of the passing of time to consolidate the fait accompli of the invasion? The answer is that the prospect of change of the negative and intransigent stance of Turkey lies in her European aspirations. It is to be found in the momentum which may be created under certain conditions and situations in the framework of her accession process and the obligations Turkey has undertaken vis-à-vis the European Union and the member states of the Union, including Cyprus. Such a momentum was created also before 2004 as a result of the accession process of the Cyprus Republic in conjunction with the European aspirations of Turkey. Unfortunately, at that time, the utilization of this opportunity and the undertaking of initiatives for a solution were not grounded in the correct framework of negotiations, but in a departure from it. The incorrect grounding of the push for a solution at that time was a negative development which, to a great extent, defined the failure of the initiative undertaken by the international community for the solution of the Cyprus problem. Through the imposition of tight time limits and the arbitration procedure, a procedure not envisaged by any of the resolutions defining the mandate for Cyprus of the Secretary General of the United Nations, the Cyprus people were led to a referendum for the approval of a solution plan which was unjust for the Greek Cypriot side. A plan, it has to be taught, of doubtful viability which did not meet the basic expectations and concerns of the people. This is why it was only to be expected that the people would reject it as referendum. The whole procedure, which was followed as well as the final formulation of the plan, can easily lead one to the conclusion that the aim at the time was merely to be rid of the Cyprus problem instead of actually solving it in a satisfactory way. The goal was to serve the geostrategic and political interests of Turkey and its powerful allies at the expense of the interests of the entire Cyprus people. Dear friends, the solution of regional and international problems must certainly be based on the UN Charter and international law. This must be the starting point and the cornerstone. On the other hand, it is also true that the solution of problems makes it imperative to seek compromises which are founded on principles, but which also satisfy the needs and the reasonable interests of the parties involved. In the case of Cyprus, as things stand today, there is an adequate foundation for a solution that will be, under the circumstances, just as well as viable and functional. A solution that will first and foremost satisfy the reasonable interests of the Cyprus people, restore and safeguard their human rights and basic freedoms, and allow them to set the course of their own future without intervention from outside. The basis for a solution is formulated by the UN resolutions on Cyprus, as well as the principles of international law and European law, given that Cyprus has been a member state of the European Union since 2004. Furthermore, the high-level agreements between the leaders of the two communities, signed in 1974 between Makarios and Dektash, and 1979 between Kyprianou and Dektash, also form part of the basis of the solution. What was agreed in these accords was in fact the solution of a bizonal, bicommunal federation in the framework of which the territory and the people of Cyprus will be reunited. The federal solution is a great compromise on the part of the Greek Cypriot community, which constitutes the majority of the population of Cyprus at approximately 80%. This compromise was made in an attempt to rid the island of the fait accompli created by the Turkish invasion and occupation. If the truth be told, federation was not exactly suitable to the geographical and demographic characteristics of Cyprus. This is so because of her small size, but also due to the fact that the Turkish Cypriot and Greek Cypriot populations were intermixed and dispersed all over the island. This, notwithstanding federation, became the only choice and nothing less than a necessity in Cyprus in order to evade partition when Turkey, through the force of arms, ousted the Greek Cypriots from the northern part of the island and exerted pressure on the Turkish Cypriots to move to the north of the island. Thus, Turkey achieved the geographic and population segregation, which she has since exploited in order to further her goal to create and have recognized two separate states on the island. Since there is a lot of discussion on federation, we need to clarify that it constitutes a form of state structure. In other words, a state, one state. Federation has nothing to do with confederation, which is not a state structure, but a loose union of two separate states. Federation constitutes one state, whereas confederation is not considered a state at all. It is rather the case that the constituent parts of the confederation are states. There are two ways in which a federation can be formed. One is the joining together of two pre-existing independent states, and the other is the transformation of unified states into federal ones. The case of Cyprus falls into the second category, since the Republic of Cyprus, when reunified, will evolve into the unified federal Cyprus Republic, consisting of the Greek Cypriot and the Turkish Cypriot communities. The type of federation intended to be established in Cyprus is described in various resolutions of the United Nations Organization as bizonal, bicommunal, with political equality, which will have one citizenship, one sovereignty, and one international personality. But what do these terms mean exactly? I shall come to this at once. Bizonality means that the federation will be made up of two regions, one of which will be under Greek Cypriot administration and one of which will be under Turkish Cypriot administration. Each of these regions will rule its own affairs, but the powers it will have in order to do so will actually be ceded to it by the federal constitution, or, in other words, the constitution of the central government of Cyprus. Bicommunality means that both communities will have effective participation in the organs, bodies, as well as the decisions of the central government. Political equality, as it is defined in the relevant UN resolutions, does not mean equality in numbers, nor does it mean equal participation in all organs, bodies, or even that all decisions will have to be unanimous. What political equality does mean is effective participation in the organs and the decision-taking process, equal competences of the two regions, and equal representation in the upper house. What one is stressing by using the terms one sovereignty, one citizenship, and one international personality is that Federal Cyprus will be a unified state in which sovereignty will be exercised only by the central government, and only which will represent the country internationally. The use of the term one citizenship makes it clear that all lawful inhabitants will be citizens of the state. We have said above that the prospect of solution is grounded in Turkey's European aspirations. The key to the solution is in the hands of Ankara, and the solution needs her cooperation and consent to be achieved. The solution, apart from serving the vital interest of the Cypriots, can also serve the vital need of the pro-European forces in Turkey to have Turkey accede to the European Union. Turkey's accession is an important factor in the political survival of the ruling party in Turkey, but also of Mr. Erdogan himself. Consequently, there is a serious motive for Mr. Erdogan and his party to cooperate in the solution of the Cyprus problem. In this sense, the solution of the Cyprus problem can be a win-win situation. In her accession course, then, Turkey can find the motive to differentiate her position on Cyprus, which up to now has been intransigent and involving delaying tactics. It is obvious that this differentiation cannot just happen by itself in view of the realities pertaining in Turkey and the control exercised by the deep state structures, particularly in matters considered to be of national importance. It is necessary for the international community, and particularly the EU, to exert their influence and pressure on Turkey to change her stance in return for the facilitation of her European prospects and an added impetus to her accession process. This is what the Republic of Cyprus is asking the international community to do. The Republic of Cyprus supports Turkey's accession to the European Union. Accession, though, cannot be subject simply to the whims and wishes of Turkey herself. To use a metaphor often used in this instance, it cannot be a la carte. It has to proceed in tandem with the fulfillment by Turkey of her obligations emanating from the decisions of the European Council of 2006, the additional Ankara Protocol, and the common statement of the EU member states of September 2005. An important landmark on the road of Turkey's accession process is December 2009, when the country will be assessed on the basis of the steps she has taken to fulfill her obligations. Up to now, the results have not been satisfactory, as the European Union itself notes. Furthermore, in reference to Turkey's obligations towards the Republic of Cyprus, Turkey has not budged an inch. She has not opened her ports and airports to the ships and airplanes of the Republic of Cyprus, and she continues to veto Cyprus' participation in international organizations, as she continues not to recognize the Republic and not to show willingness to cooperate in the solution of the Cyprus problem. In actual fact, Turkey pays only lip service to the solution efforts, and she refrains from taking a stance on substantial issues. Without fulfillment of her obligations, Turkey cannot hope to a continuation of her accession process. Without the termination of occupation and the withdrawal of her troops from Cyprus, she cannot hope to accede to the European Union. Dear friends, the role of Turkey is definitive in the solution of the Cyprus problem. This, however, does not mean that the role of the two communities is insignificant. On the contrary, it is very important. The two communities are called upon to find a solution to the internal aspects of the Cyprus problem. This is what is aimed at in the course of the intercommunal talks which have been taking place intermittently since 1976. A new round of direct negotiations between the two communities began last September. This became feasible when the President of the Republic, Mr. Dimitris Christofias, undertook an initiative immediately after his election for a meeting with the Turkish Cypriot leader, Mr. Talat. The meeting, which took place on March 21st, 2008, led to an agreement for the preparation of negotiations by working groups and technical committees which dealt with substantial matters and daily life issues and confidence-building measures, respectively. During this preparatory period, Christofias and Talat met a few times, and as a result of these meetings, the basis of the solution of the Cyprus problem was reaffirmed. In other words, it was reaffirmed that the basis of the solution is bizonal, bicommunal federation, with political equality as it is described in the relevant resolutions of the United Nations, for one state with one sovereignty, one citizenship, and one international nationality. It was also reaffirmed that the talks are not to be subject to strict time frames and that no kind of arbitration is to be envisaged. The process is of Cypriot ownership, and the United Nations under the aegis of which the talks are taking place support and encourage the two communities to reach a mutually acceptable solution which will be approved by parallel referenda. Until today, there have been 24 meetings between the leaders of the two communities. The chapters discussed so far were the chapter dealing with governance and the power sharing, the chapter of properties, and we are now at the chapter of European affairs. The progress achieved so far cannot, in all honesty, be said to be satisfactory. The negotiations present many difficulties, and often the Turkish side brings proposals to the table that are very far from the agreed basis for a solution. The complete picture of the negotiation is not particularly encouraging. Nevertheless, the Greek Cypriot side is determined to press on and exhaust all possibilities for a solution. If finally we do not reach the desired goal, which is the solution, then the international community must put the blame squarely where it belongs. It must blame the side whose positions at the table do not serve the solution of bizonal bicommunal federation. It must put the blame on Turkey if the occupying power continues to obstruct a solution with her negative stance. Dear friends, with all we have said here, I hope that it has become clear that the Cyprus problem has not been resolved and remains open, not due to the absence of a satisfactory basis and framework, but due to the lack of political will on the part of the Turkish side. If the Turkish side decides to implement the resolution of Cyprus and the agreements between the two communities, if Turkey decides to end her unlawful behavior in Cyprus, the Cyprus problem will be solved. While the Cyprus problem remains unresolved, the dangers for Cyprus and the region persist. While the problem remains unresolved, the international community has to answer to history because it is tolerating an illegality and an anachronism, the Turkish occupation and de facto partition of the island, to annul international law and undermine peace and normality in the region and the world. The President of the Republic, Mr. Dimitris Christofias, will continue to work hard for the achievement of a solution, remaining committed to principle, exhibiting decisiveness, but also the flexibility necessary in the negotiations. His vision is that Cyprus and her people, Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots, be reunited in conditions of permanent peace and security, and for the country to become a bridge of cooperation in the region. Thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you very much for that most penetrating address on the subject. I'm sure that there will be many of you out there who would like to ask questions. This will be your opportunity to do so. There are two rules about asking questions on these sorts of occasions. The first, which is quite easy, when you're called upon to put your question, please say your name and the affiliation of any organisation that you are with. And then the second rule, and it's the most important one perhaps, is please don't make a speech, ask a question. And that way, everybody who wants to ask a question will have the opportunity to do so. So please, if you would like to ask a question, please raise your hand. The gentleman just there.
Stefanos, Mr. Stefanou, how do you evaluate the attitude of the British government vis-à-vis developments within the talks and in a more general sphere?
Can I ask you a complementary question so that you have the opportunity?
Okay.
My name is Stefanos and I'm professor at the University of Cambridge. And my question is this. About 2 weeks ago, I think, in a not dissimilar document, the ambassador of Britain to Ankara was arguing that, as they talk currently, Erdogan is much more willing. Erdogan is much more willing than anybody else in the past, not even previously his government, to find a solution to the Cyprus problem. And I think the ambassador was acting very strongly and fervently that he was right about his statement. I'm sure you disagree, but the question is, why?
Well, so that was a question about British policy, and then one that was apparently connected to it, but I didn't hear the word British coming into it. Now a Turkish man, I think, but please answer this question, and then I'll invite some more.
I would say that Great Britain is part of the problem, but not a part of the negotiations. We follow a procedure that the two communities, the Greek Cypriot and the Turkish Cypriot community, to work towards the achievement of an overall solution of the Cyprus problem. That means that the important role is in the hands of the two communities of Cyprus. They have to prove to the outside world that despite the problems, despite the disagreements, they are ready to overcome the problems and to find a way to move forward, to solve the problems, to reunify their own common country, and to work together in a common homeland in order to create their own future. Of course, as I said before, the key of the solution is in the hands of Ankara. This is the decisive factor of the solution. We know that within Turkey there is, let's say, contradictory process. There is a conflict between the so-called deep state and the pro-European forces in Turkey, and I believe that all these forces are expressed through the party of Mr. Erdogan and the Prime Minister of Turkey, Mr. Erdogan. I am a political scientist, and I try to find motives and incentives for states and peoples in order to move forward and to solve problems. There is an incentive for Turkey. The European aspirations of the country. And I believe that this is an enough strong incentive for Turkey to work towards the solution of the Cyprus problem. And this is our hope that the pro-European forces within Turkey will prevail and will force the deep state to say yes to a solution of the Cyprus problem. I don't know if the pro-European forces in Turkey are enough strong to prevail. Yesterday's result of the local elections, I believe that they are not so encouraging, but it's very early to evaluate the results of the local elections. I must say that this kind of situations, as is the situation now in Turkey, are very complicated and very difficult to say what the result will be. But without to be optimistic, it's not possible to work for the solution of the Cyprus problem. To come back to Great Britain, there is a role for the international community, and especially for Great Britain, who is one of the guarantor power according to the Establishment Treaty of 1960. Great Britain is a very close ally to Turkey, and Great Britain has to support on principles the efforts of the two communities to reach to a comprehensive solution. I believe that her stance until now is an encouraging one. It's a stance that push and the international community and the two communities in Cyprus to continue their work, but the international community and especially the European Union as a whole has to do more. They have to call upon Turkey to change her stance and to cooperate for a comprehensive solution of the Cyprus problem. As I said before, and we believe very much in this, the solution of the Cyprus problem can be a win-win situation. And for the Cyprus people, first of all, Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots, and for Turkey, the solution of the Cyprus problem will help her accession to the European Union, will help the international picture of Turkey. And I know that Turkey now, she tries to build a better picture for herself in the international scene. And we shall not forget that Turkey now is a non-permanent member of the Security Council. And she has to work on the basis of the Charter of the United Nations. So, the work is in front of us. We have to work together with Turkish Cypriot community, Mr. Christofias and Mr. Talat. I believe that this is the best momentum that we have ever had in Cyprus. The leader of the Greek Cypriot left movement, Mr. Christofias, the President of the Republic, and the leader, actually now the spiritual father of the left party of the Turkish Cypriot community, which is in favor of the solution of the Cyprus problem and the reunification of the island. This is the best momentum to continue our work and to achieve a solution. This is the wager that we have to win.
Lady at the back there, please.
And a little bit louder, please, because I
Have
have
your microphone.
My name is Aliki Paris, and I'm really rather saddened that we are still dependent, as you put it, on Turkey's European aspirations. On the one hand, you've said that. On the other hand, you've said that they are completely intransigent, have not taken one step so far towards any sort of solution. So my question would be, why is an illegal occupation dependent on Turkey's needs, and why isn't that dealt with as a separate issue?
because we have to look for incentives for Turkey to take a positive move. Otherwise, we can't win Turkey in a battlefield. We have to do with an international problem like the Cyprus problem is, and we have to convince Turkey to work towards the solution of the Cyprus problem. There is the only incentive for Turkey which is enough strong, the European aspiration of Turkey. Otherwise, what else can be for Turkey? The principles of the international law. We know very well the realities now in Turkey. We don't believe that there is enough stable basis for the ruling powers in Turkey to take into account the international law and on this basis to work for the solution. We have to look, we have to seek for an incentive. And that's why we say, and I reply that we believe very much in this, that Cyprus problem could be a win-win situation, and for Cyprus, and for Turkey, and for the whole region, even for the European Union, because the Cyprus problem is a European problem, and it is a problem for the European Union as itself. So, here is the incentives, here is the momentum. Everybody shall work towards the same direction, the direction of the solution, even for Turkey. Otherwise, I don't believe that it will be enough strong the incentive for Turkey. This is unfortunately the reality. But we prefer, I must say, a European Turkey than a Turkey that will be without any control, without any rules. Turkey which will not share any principles and any values. So a Turkey within European Union, we believe that will be a prospect ally, and for Cyprus, the united Cyprus, for Greece, for region, and of course for the European Union.
Some more questions? We'll take a couple here. Take this gentleman here and the gentleman over there.
I'd like to make a comment on that question.
Could you introduce yourself,
First,
please?
Eddie O'Hara, MP. A comment on the last question, a supplementary on the first question, and an issue which I don't think you addressed in your excellent address, for which I thank you, Mr. Stephanou. I think the idea of evicting Turkey from Cyprus by force of arms is tantamount to destroying NATO, and is a perfect recipe for the adage of the operation succeeded, but the patient sadly died. NATO and the Republic of Cyprus, even perhaps. Supplementing the first question, would you say that the British government's attitude towards putting pressure on Turkey has improved in very recent times? I think the present European Minister I think is making some very positive comments. And then finally, my substantive question, the elephant in the room, which I don't think you mentioned, you talk about two communities. There are in fact three. There are the Turkish Cypriots, the Greek Cypriot, and the EPIKI. What do you have to say about the solution for the EPIKI within an overall solution?
Can we just take the question from the gentleman there?
My question is very different from that, if I may.
Introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Kostas Kleanthous. I'm wondering how important it is to Turkey to solve the Cyprus problem at the moment. We hear more and more that the European aspirations of the Turkish people, rather than the government, are receding. That more people are now looking towards the east. We have seen Mr. Erdogan doing the tour of the Middle East and trying to build up a number of powers around him as a regional superpower. We're seeing America, even the new administration of America, backing Turkey in this respect. Then of course we've got the problem with the Kurds, or Turkey has the problem with the Kurds and everything they're trying to do there. Taking all this into consideration, how important do you think it is for Turkey to solve the Cyprus problem, to get into the European Union at the moment? Does she not have bigger problems to sort out first?
It is one of the aspirations of the Turkish government. I mean, the prospect of the accession of the country to the European Union. I don't believe that the European aspirations of Turkey is a fact which is independent from the other aspirations of Turkey. I mean, to play a role of a peripheral superpower. And Turkey now is a superpower for the region and very significant ally to the United States of America. And this is the reason why the United States and of course Great Britain support the European aspirations of Turkey. This is something which has to take into account in order to achieve what we want to achieve. We want to achieve a solution. So we try to find elements, factors, and all these situations that will work as an incentive or as an instrument in order to exert influence on Turkey, to encourage her to cooperate for a solution. We don't say that the situation is very easy and the solution of the Cyprus problem could be reached very easily. It's not so simple, you know, but 34 years after 1974, we shall seek for all the factors that we could use them in order to convince Turkey to cooperate. Otherwise, we will say that we terminate our efforts. There's nothing in our hands in order to convince Turkey, so let's proceed to the other step, which is very fatal for our people and for our country. I mean, the division and the partition of the island, which is very catastrophic. I believe that the European aspirations of Turkey is a part of the aspirations of the pro-European powers in Turkey to play a role of a superpower in the region and in the Middle East, and not only, and in former Soviet republics and in the Eastern Mediterranean region. So in this trap, we have to look for reasons and factors that they could help us in our work. What about settlers? You know that colonization is a victim of war. It's a crime of war. And we have a crime on behalf of Turkey. We have thousands of settlers that they have changed the demographical character of the Turkish Cypriot community and the Cyprus people as a whole. So we want, through the achievement of the solution, to terminate the colonization, the presence of settlers, and through the solution of the Cyprus problem, to gain the right for our people, the Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots, to live together without the illegal presence of foreigners. Because now in Cyprus you have thousands of foreigners, they are welcome of course, but we want in Cyprus, after the solution, the principles and the laws to function in a European country which is an equal member and in the European Union and not an abnormal member state of the European Union. So it's something that we have to discuss. Unfortunately, the issue of settlers is not included in the chapters of the direct negotiations, but we intend to raise the question and to discuss it together with our compatriots, because we believe that the Turkish Cypriot community wants to have their own characteristics without the presence of thousands of settlers, which are an element which is very harmful, first of all, for the Turkish Cypriot community, which is a small community. I don't know if
Can the two gentlemen at the back together, one on the left first and then the gentleman sitting down next.
Thank you, Chair. I had, with your permission, I have two short questions. My name is Droussiotis, CPPCR, founder. Two short questions, if I may. First one is, we have United Nations Charters and the European Declarations on Human Rights, 48, 52, and 2 in 1966. The culmination of these declarations were the Annan Plan of 2004, which the Turkish side has accepted. So the question number one is, if the Turks have accepted, do they not hold the high moral ground on the Cyprus issue? The second question is, since post-74, there has been no intercommunal violence in Cyprus. Since 1974, there has been no intercommunal violence. There has been no communal killings, in other words. Does that not suggest that peace has arrived in Cyprus, but maybe not in the format that you would like? Can you please give me your explanations as to what you think of those two questions?
Yeah.
Right. My name is Ferdi Süleyman. I'm a Turkish Cypriot. First of all, you talked about the deep state. I mean, we Turkish Cypriots have experienced that in the hard way. Was it in 1995, the murder of Kutlu Adalı was a good example, and many people who've been threatened by this deep state. So we Turkish Cypriots do not want to be ruled by the deep state. So leading on from that, even at this late stage, do you not think that apart from all the other leverages that you're talking about, Turkey being in a European Union, that the common struggle between the Turkish Cypriots and the Greek Cypriots is the most paramount way to go forward, even at this stage, that the Turkish, referring back to 2004, most Turkish Cypriots did vote for a united Cyprus, and I still believe that most Turkish Cypriots do want a united Cyprus, and that is the way forward, and that we should be joining together to struggle for this, which is for the benefit of both communities and for everybody else living on the island.
Starting from that, we want a solution that will be beneficial for both communities, for Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots, in a common country, in which the two communities will be the owners of their own country. And I come from a party, a girl party, that believes very much in the common struggle between the two communities. If the two communities are not able to show to the outside world that they are ready to live together without any problems, to build their own country, then the messages are very weak. And of course Turkey will say that when I left you alone in the past, you managed to destroy everything between you by communal conflicts of 1958 and 1963, 1964. We know that we had mistakes in the past. Of course, we know that the source of the intercommunal problems in Cyprus was outside. And I can tell you the well-known dogma of divide and rule that created problems between the two communities, and of course the actions and the behavior of the ultra-nationalists in both communities. We have mistakes, and we have to learn to take our lessons from the past in order to overcome all the problems between the two communities. But the main source of the problem, of the Cyprus problem, is not the intercommunal problems. It's the presence of the occupational troops and of the external interventions. So we have to eliminate, to terminate the main source of the problems, which is the presence of the occupation and the presence of the illegal presence of Turkey on the island. Since 1974, we don't have peace in Cyprus. I don't know if we can talk about peace when 40,000 of troops are located in Cyprus, and when people forced to move from their houses by the force of weapons and of politics based on army. We look and we struggle for permanent peace, for permanent security, and of course we want to give the power to our people, Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots, to be masters of their own fate. Because I don't know if you ask the majority of the Turkish Cypriots if they feel very well with the presence of the occupation in the north. I'm not so sure. And we are ready, recognizing the mistakes that we had in the past, together to build and to safeguard the rights and the freedoms of all Cypriots, and of Greek Cypriots and of Turkish Cypriots, and together to work for a future without occupation, without division, without refugees, without settlers, and without any source of anomaly in Cyprus. This is our belief. I don't know if everybody can share this vision, but this is our vision. a peaceful Cyprus, a united Cyprus, without foreign troops, without foreign military bases, if we want to refer to the role of Great Britain. But first of all, we want to solve the Cyprus problem now. Otherwise, the future of the Greek Cypriots and the Turkish Cypriots is under question mark, a big question mark, especially of the Turkish Cypriots. This is our belief.
Yeah, sorry, I would like to ask for the 2000.
So you have one go at it.
I haven't had
No, please.
You mean of the Annan plan?
Yes.
Okay, I can tell you.
Thank you. Thank you.
There was a procedure of coming to a proposed plan. And the end of the procedure was the referendum. I don't know if we can find a more democratic way for people to decide for their own fate. And the Greek Cypriots and the Turkish Cypriots, in parallel referenda, voted for Annan plan. And Annan plan was refused. This was a refusal not to the solution of the Cyprus problem, to the concrete plan. That's why we have continued our work towards the solution of the Cyprus problem. It's not a positive approach to look always to the past. We have to look in front of us. And as I said in my introductory speech, there is enough base on which we can build our dreams and we can reach and can achieve a mutual acceptable solution on the Cyprus problem. Otherwise, the problem will persist.
Thank you. I'm going to take just two more questions. Have the lady here and then the lady behind just there. You first.
Emine Ibrahim, no affiliation. So my kind of question is more to do with what you were saying earlier about the settlers. I think you made a slight Freudian slip maybe when you used the term victim of war as opposed to crime of war. Because would you not argue that the settlers, or I mean, the terminology is slightly off as well, are themselves also victims of war, and some of the language that's often used around it, I mean, whilst appreciating the meaning and the context in which it's used, in particularly in the political environment of Europe, it is generally associated with the far right, and I find it slightly what's the word? I mean, I understand the kind of the meaning behind it, but sometimes it can come across as being quite what's the word? It's not traditionally associated with leftist movements, and I'm have a slight discomfort with that.
Okay, and the lady there, yes.
You spoke about, Dr. Maria Toforidis. I'm also a political scientist, and I'd like to turn the attention onto the domestic process. We've spoken a lot about international things. So you spoke about a unified state internationally, and I was wondering how much thought there has been as to the organisation, the competencies of different levels of government within this unified state. Thinking, for example, of areas such as education. Where would that come under? Have the discussions progressed to that level at this stage? Yes, as to who would be responsible for what? Federal, the federal level, obviously, the municipal, the regional, and also education. What would that come under?
So, in relation with settlers, the position that through the solution of the Cyprus problem, we want to eliminate the issue of the presence of settlers in Cyprus doesn't have to do with the human beings. I can say that a number of them is a victim of unlawful policies, but I can ignore and I can avoid to discuss the issue in the framework of the policy of bringing people, foreign people, to live in an occupied area. This is a crime of war. So if I want to solve a problem, I have to solve it on principle. And we have to restore the laws, the international law, and on this issue. Of course, we know that during the negotiations and towards the efforts to solve the problem, that various issues on this chapter will raise up. What about the second and the third generation, for example, of settlers in Cyprus? What about the children, the mixed marriages? We are ready to discuss these issues, but first of all, we have to agree on the principal issue in order to restore the international law on the issue of settlers and of the colonization. As you may know, the President of the Republic openly declared that he is ready to accept a number of 50,000 settlers after the solution of the Cyprus problem. This refers to the humanitarian issues, but before to agree on that, we have to agree on the issue of the restoring of the law on the issue of colonization, to be very clear on that. What about education? I must confess that very little we have discussed all these years about the solution of federation, of coexistence, of cooperation in Cyprus. Although since 1977 we have agreed for a bizonal bicommunal federation, we haven't said enough things to our people what federation is. What is the situation in a state that it is a bicommunal state? The power sharing, the necessity of handling with another community the fate of the state. This is something that has to be said. And we work towards this direction. We try to make reform in Cyprus education, not to write the history vice versa, because the president is being accused by various forces in Cyprus. We believe that it's enough for us and for the Greek Cypriots and for the Turkish Cypriots to say the truth. We don't have anything to fear from the truth, to ignore our mistakes, to recognize our mistakes, but to recognize the necessity as well to move forward together. We have a long history of coexistence. We can build our coexistence in the future, in the near future, on the coexistence of the past. We have to learn why we have reached to this situation, from the coexistence of the Turkish Cypriots and the Greek Cypriots. We have passed through tragedies to reach to 1974. Why? We have to know. In order to learn from our history, how can we avoid the mistakes in order to work together and to live together in a common country. We don't afraid the history. We are sure that on the basis of the history of the common struggle between the Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots, we can stand very decisively and to move forward.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure we could go on talking about this all evening, but that would be what they call in the United States Constitution, cruel and unusual punishment for us. I think we all know that the division of Cyprus is one of those world issues that often generates a lot of heat and not always a great deal of light. And I would like to thank our guest this evening for actually shedding some light on
I want to say something very, very brief. President of the Republic believed very much in the solution of the Cyprus problem. The solution of the problem is his vision. But first of all, Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots shall believe in the solution and in the unification. If we believe in that, I'm sure that we can overcome all the obstacles and the problems and to achieve the solution. I want to express this message before to leave the podium.
And on that note of optimism, I invite you all to partake of some refreshments which are outside the room. Thank you very much.
Διαρωτούμουν αν ήταν επιστήμη ή επιστέμε ή όχι.
Ήταν μια εξαιρετική συνάντηση για μένα, γιατί μου έδωσε την ευκαιρία να εξηγήσω και να πω τις απόψεις της κυβέρνησης σε ζητήματα που αφορούν το κυπριακό πρόβλημα. Αυτό το οποίο προσπάθησα να εξηγήσω και ενώπιον φίλων των Κυπρίων είναι ότι εμείς θέλουμε μέσα από τη λύση του Κυπριακού να διασφαλιστεί ότι ολόκληρος ο λαός, οι Κύπροι και οι Κύπροι, να μπορούν να ζουν σε συνθήκες μόνιμης ειρήνης και ασφάλειας και να είναι οι πραγματικοί αφέντες του τόπου τους, χωρίς κανένας ξένος να μπορεί να παρέμβει, να επέμβει στα εσωτερικά τους τα ζητήματα. Ήδη ο λαός μας, Ελληνοκύπροι και Τουρκοκύπροι, έχουν πάθει πάρα πολλά από τις ξένες επεμβάσεις και θα πρέπει να διασφαλιστεί ότι με τη λύση του Κυπριακού δεν θα υπάρχει αυτός ο παράγοντας που θα είναι μια πηγή να δημιουργηθούν νέες τραγωδίες και νέες ανομαλίες.